The best and simplest way of practicing your speech is to simply video record yourself. If you can do that at least 3 or 4 times and look back at it and evaluate yourself, you don't even need to watch the rest of this video. But if for whatever reason video recording is not easy for you and you want a step-by-step process to help you lead or ease into recording your speech and want to know things like should you memorize your speech, should you practice in front of a mirror, and a couple of exercises that you can do, frankly, even every day to help you become a better public speaker, then stick around for the rest of the video. Hey, my name is Radeep and I'm the founder of Frantically Speaking, and I love learning about effective communication and sharing those learnings with you so that you can level up your communications game as well. If you're new over here, consider hitting subscribe as we release new videos around communication every week. So first, we're going to begin with the 5 steps that will help us practice our speech and eventually end it off with 2 exercises that you can practice almost every day, which will help you become not just a stronger public speaker, but an overall more visual communicator. The very first thing is actually knowing your speech. Now, many times you may wonder whether we should actually memorize our content. And the answer in my experience is mostly no. You don't want to memorize your content because I've had experiences where I have learned the script line by line, and if I'm forgetting a line here or there, it tends to disrupt the entire flow of my delivery. Better than that is to prepare a simple outline of our speech. So what's the main idea that we want to lead our audience into? What's our introduction and conclusion? What is the main story about? And have that prepared in somewhat of a speech outline, and try to know your content as opposed to learning your content. And a very basic and simple way to start familiarizing yourself with your content is to simply start reading it out loud and eventually covering your hands with your notes and trying to say it out loud. Having said this, if you do have time to memorize for your speech, then memorize the heck out of it. Practice it so many times and so intentionally that you know exactly what comes after which line, where you need to pause, where you need to lower your pitch, where you need to increase your pace, whatever it might be, practice it to the T. But that will of course require a heavy time investment and is usually not worth it unless the speech or presentation you're going to be giving is of high value or high stakes. The next thing that really helps us practice our speech is to audio record them. Now, I audio record my speech 3 times and it helps me reduce the usage of my filler words like R's and ums, and helps me keep a note of my pace and tonality. Tonality is important because it helps us inflect. In simple words, it just helps convey our emotions through our tone of voice. So when I say I audio record my speech 3 times, what do I mean by that? The first time I'll audio record it with my notes in front of me. This will help me say my speech the way I want it, help me be a lot more intentional with my tonality and pace, and most likely avoid filler words. Immediately after that, I record my speech the second time without my notes, even if I'm not familiar with the content. And during this second audio recording helps me identify my weak spots. Where do I tend to block? Where do I tend to forget stuff? Where do I tend to use filler words excessively? And after I know those weak spots, I take a gap between my second and third recording, say my speech out loud a couple of more times to familiarize myself more with the content, and finally record it for the 3rd time, again without my notes. By this time, hopefully your speech will be a lot cleaner as opposed to your second recording, and having this comparison of all 3 recordings will really help you narrow down on your weak spots and focus your practice on the areas you need to improve upon the most. The 3rd step is to simply get up and practice your speech in front of a mirror. Now, I've heard from a lot of public speaking gurus that practicing in front of a mirror should be completely avoided and it's not a good way to practice, but frankly, it's not that bad. Mirrors have really helped me understand my facial expressions a lot better, and at the end of it, it's just putting more time into practicing, which helps us internalize our content a lot more. One thing that we should keep in mind to make our mirror practice sessions as productive as possible is to do the 4th step, which is exaggerate. Exaggerate your body language, exaggerate your tonality, exaggerate your facial expressions, especially if you're like me, somebody who's naturally introverted, naturally soft-spoken, and does not like to be out there very often. So for example, if you need to convey anger through your speech, don't just say it the way you normally would. Say it the way an actor would in a movie. And at this point, you might start to feel a little fake, but that's okay. We're not trying to be anybody else. We're just trying to push our boundaries in terms of how comfortable our body feels in different scenarios. And exaggerating things like our body language and tonality will eventually help us push these boundaries and be more fluid and loose on stage. And if you're worried about sounding or looking fake, just do this for your practice sessions when nobody else is looking in front of the mirror. By the time you get on stage, you can avoid all those exaggerated movements, but in most cases, you'll be so much more comfortable moving your body around and variating your voice from up and down if you've done those exaggerated practices. And the fifth point is finally to video record yourself. Frankly, as I said before, if you just do that, you're mainly good to go, because video recording yourself 3 to 4 times and rewatching those videos, no matter how cringy it may feel, will help you evaluate yourself so much better and so much faster. As a bonus tip, you can also send your video recording to somebody who you consider to be a good public speaker or somebody who has a lot of knowledge in the space you're giving a speech about. Having a third-party feedback will just help you get another perspective and help you note down weak points that you probably would have missed when you're practicing by yourself. And finally, let's move on to the 2 exercises that you can do almost every day to help you become a better public speaker. The first thing is an exercise called the emoji exercise. Now, when I was in college, I had to do this ramp walk for my college for whatever reason. And I remember that when I was practicing for that ramp walk, it was just, I never realized how difficult walking can actually be. Especially when you have so many people staring at you and you have light shining on you. It was very evident that I was very nervous, and that nervousness was showing through my face. And a large part of that reason was because my facial muscles were very, very tight. So my mother actually introduced me to this idea where she said that, you know those emojis that you send to your friends all the time? Go in front of a mirror and start making those emoji expressions. So I found the idea very weird at first, but I went in front of the mirror and I started doing things like and eventually that still looks so stupid, but eventually that did help me loosen my muscles. And the next time, right after doing the exercise, when I would practice and eventually when I went up on stage, my facial muscles were not that tight and people could not really see the nervousness or consciousness on my face. And the second exercise is something called bioenergizing, which I learned from one of my favorite YouTubers. His name is Elliot Hulse. And he essentially teaches these warm-up routines that make you move your entire body, your arms, your legs, your neck, and your head in such a way that helps you become a lot looser. I'm putting a link in the description below where you can check out his video where he does these exercises, and doing them right before your practice sessions and even on the day of your speech right before you go up will not only help you be a lot more fluid on stage, it will also help you energize yourself right before your performance. And that's about it, your step-by-step guide to practicing for your next speech. If you have any more questions or thoughts on things like communications or public speaking, we have an entire website with in-depth articles and resources dedicated just for that. So go check out franticallyspeaking.com.